Someone asked me, is foreigners welcome in China? Well, this is a funny question, to be honest, because right now China is opening so many visa-free for European countries, but not the other way around. Actually, when I was living in China for so many years, foreigners are always super popular in China. I remember when I was living in Chengdu, I used to go clubbing with my friends a lot. Most of my friends, they are foreigners. And in some clubs, they would offer free drinks for foreigners, like completely free. And when I hang out with my foreign friends, I got free drinks as well. I mean, I don't drink, but still. So yeah, Chinese people are too good for foreigners, if anything else. That actually lead to some really unequal situation. Especially as a foreigner, if you get a job in China, the salary is way much higher than Chinese people, even in the same position. And I realized the West has been demonized China for so many years that they are basically like living in a bubble. They don't really see China as a real country. They see it as some kind of demonic country that is trying to take over the world or whatever. And also I've been traveling around for a while, and I realized in a lot of cases, in some aspects, China is actually more open than Europe. Of course, you may not agree with me, and there's only one way to find out, right? I mean, just go to China, figure it out yourself. Can people speak English in China? Well, that's a good question, to be honest. Well, technically, everyone learned English when they were students in China, but apparently not everyone is good. And also, it really depends on the city. If it's like really international city like Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, blah, 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 lots of people can speak English. At least they can understand a little bit. But to be honest, they are not the best. Not as popular as in Poland or Europe in general. So if you do want to come to China, you probably will need some kind of translator, or come with me. The best way to go to China is to go to China with a Chinese boyfriend. So here you go. During COVID time, it's almost impossible to go to China, even including Chinese who live abroad. But now, after the COVID, China is really open to the outside world. So far, there's been over 10 countries in Europe, including Poland, that can visit China. And here I'm going to tell you something, just a little bit about China, why it's worth visiting. First of all, it's really safe. It's a really safe country, especially if you stay in the big cities. And secondly, it's really technology advanced. Well, before I was living in Serbia, and when I went to Serbia, I feel like I was going back in time, like 10 years ago or something. And compared to Poland, for example, it's still quite advanced. And third is that it's really cheap in China when you compare to Poland in general. Everything is cheaper. And the food is, well, let's be honest, Asian food is more diverse, let's say. So you can taste a lot of good food, and there's a lot of places to visit, and people are generally really kind to foreigners as well. But of course, if you do plan to travel to China, I would suggest you to do a little bit homework about China. I mean, yes, right now you don't need a visa anymore, but still, do a little bit homework before you go, because, for example, how to pay money in China and things like that, because we don't really use money like cash anymore, and we also don't really use credit card. We use something called Alipay and WeChat. With Alipay, actually you can download the app, and it's in English. You can link to your credit card or bank account, and then you can use Alipay to pay in China. The most normal way is to scan the QR code. Like when you pay the person, you scan their QR code, or they scan your QR code. There's something else that you can pay as well. One thing is that I can pay with my watch, for example. Or if you don't have anything, you can pay with your face. That's normally what I do. When not always, but there's some shops that have this machine that you could just pay in with your face. So, so you don't even need to carry anything with you. You can still shop in. When we go to restaurants in China, do we need tips? Well, we don't have a chance because we don't use cash anymore, guys. Come on. Actually, it would be really weird if you leave some money on the table when you left, they would take the money and try to catch you and give it back to you. That's the situation. We are not America, you know, so thank God. So since yesterday, 24th of June, China finally opened free visa to Polish citizens. And it's for 15 days. But to be honest, 15 days is really not enough to fully experience China. You know, China is such a big country. But here's a trick. You can actually go to Hong Kong after the 15 days and then come back. Then you will have another 15 days. So you just like keep going to Hong Kong and come back. It's like some kind of visa run, you know?
In China right now you don't even have time zones.
Exactly.
But this is not a good thing.
No, it is. For China it is. It's not about time zone, it's about how to make things more efficient.
Yeah, but in
And the
whole
connection.
China you have Beijing time. And
Exactly, that's good.
It doesn't have any sense.
It does, because so China is so big that it actually has 5 natural time zones. But right now, the whole China only use Beijing time. Back in the early 20th centuries, there were several time zones in China, but in 1930s, the government back then made it into only one time zone, and when the new China came out, they just carry it on. The reason why China only use one time zone is because it's much easier for the government to control, not just politically, but also economically. When they use the same time in the whole country, it makes things much more efficient and reduce the confusion in time. But there are some areas, for example, like Xinjiang, they actually use a little bit more flexible time. I mean, officially, they still use the Beijing time in Xinjiang, but the local people rest in their Xinjiang time so that it can be more fit to the natural time. For China, this is really good to have only one time zone. And actually, when I learned that there's so many time zones in America, I was really shocked.
It's natural because like
It is, but for the country's sake, it's not efficient. It doesn't make sense for Chinese people. And Chinese people always seek for efficiency. That's the key. There are so many nice cities in China that worth visiting, and I'm going to give you like a tiny fraction of them. Well, first of all, 4 biggest cities in China is that Shanghai, Beijing, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen. But I would recommend another city to you, the city that I used to live for 4 years. It's my favorite city in China. It's called Chengdu. It's the city of pandas, you know, the cute animals. The food is amazing. It's kind of spicy though. The nightlife there is really amazing. I used to party there a lot through the whole night, the clubs and everything, and people are really open. One thing about Chengdu that is famous for is that the girls in Chengdu, they are like super beautiful. So be careful. If you have a girlfriend, they probably should stop you from going to Chengdu. About the pollution in China, I'm going to give you some real feedback. It actually really depends on where you go. For example, if you're going to Guangdong province, my hometown, there's really not much pollution, to be honest, or some city near the coastline. But if you go to, for example, I used to live in Chengdu, when it comes to winter, the pollution is really, really bad. At least that was like 6 years ago. I think it's still pretty bad now. During the summer it's fine, but once the winter comes, it's really bad. The AQI can go all the way to 200 or even 300. And when you go out, you have to wear a mask. At home, I had to get an air filter to clean the air. So it was pretty bad. So when you travel to China, you need to check out which city you are going and what season that you are going. Normally the pollution is pretty bad in winter in some cities, but it really depends on which city that you are going, to be honest. And my city has no pollution at all, and it's really close to the seaside. So anyone want to come with me?